Welcome to Global Village. This is where the East meets the West. We're airing today from JBS Canada Center in Brooks, and we thank the City of Brooks for giving us the opportunity to air from the center. And we are also very honored to have our great mayor, Barry Morishita, and Lisa, who is an immigration lawyer, who is opening a branch in Brooks, and my co-host, Mr. Levi Fernell.
Thank you.
Welcome to the program, sir.
Thanks. Nice
Welcome
to be here.
to the program. Yeah. Yes, sir. Congratulations for being re-elected again with no problem. You're doing a great job. What is the your vision in the next few years that you think prioritization in the City of Brooks?
I think priorities, certainly economic development and transforming some of the economy to some more solid bases, long-term, taking advantage of the natural resources we have in terms of manufacturing skills and taking those skills that have been developed over the last several years in the oil patch and trying to change them into new opportunities for some of that skill. I think the other thing is that the value-added agricultural sector is a huge portion of what can become food security, water, wastewater treatment. There are a lot of municipal services. So I think it's just branching out into new areas for the community to maybe lead the province in some areas. That's what we want to do for the next 4 years.
Wow.
So Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am from Brooks originally. I spent most of my life here. My mom and dad are of Jamaican origin, but I've graduated from Brooks High School and moved on to the city shortly after that. I went to school to study initially commerce and psychology, and I also did my law degree in Calgary. So I started a practice in Calgary doing immigration and family law largely, with always having an idea of coming back home where my mom and dad still live and would love if I moved back permanently. And I think the opportunity finally arose. And it's a good mix, I think, with the areas that I practice in and the way that Brooks has kind of shaped itself over the last 20 years, because it's definitely a different place than I left 20 years ago.
Wow.
Very cool.
Yeah, coming back, Mr. Mayor, the other hat of Alberta Health Services advisory.
Yeah, the Health Advisory Council.
Yeah, that you are in. Is there any opportunity for the Bassano initiative that you've been championing for a long time?
I know the Health Advisory Council has taken that on as one of their priorities.
Okay.
You know, the idea of leveraging community support
Yeah.
and trying to keep seniors in the community is a big reason for the way the center was developed. There's operational advantages, so we're still working hard on that. In fact, we've got some efforts made with Alberta Health Services coming up shortly, and we're hoping we're going to continue to press forward because we think it's a model that can be used all over the province in smaller rural communities, and it just provides great value for money, and it helps make communities sustainable.
So it will be in Bassano, or it will be for the county and the whole city?
Yeah, it'll be in Bassano, and that hospital there serves about a population of around 3,000, 4,000 people within the county and also outside of the county. The one cool thing about the facility as we're envisioning it is that, you know, for couples that have varied health needs, one needs assisted living, one doesn't, maybe one needs a little more help along this health spectrum, they can stay together. They can be in the same facility together. You know, that there's a lot of evidence that supports way better quality of life. There's less stress on the family when parents that have, you know, been married for 40, 50 years get to stay together, look after each other and whatever their health needs are. So I think it'll serve a bigger population because there won't be a facility like that in the county.
Wow.
When would that facility be completed by? What's your goal?
Well, Levi, you know, we've been working on it for 5 years, and the board has stuck to its vision. Give them credit. The Newell Foundation, the seniors housing, has stuck to their vision, and we aren't compromising on it. So we're kind of in it for the long haul. I can tell you that it gets a bit discouraging at times, but we're going to stick with it. We just keep pressing forward. We haven't given ourselves a time limit. We just know it's the right thing to do, so we're gonna keep pressing until we get the facility built.
Good deal. So Lisa, why did you choose to become a lawyer, especially immigration and family?
Well, it's a tough question. When I was kind of giving that some thought in preparation for today, I'm not really sure. I guess my family would probably say that I've always been very argumentative and wanting to prove my point always. I think from an educational standpoint, I was really interested in ideas about justice and equality and accessibility to legal services, which is a really big problem in terms of providing legal services, given that we have this idea that legal services are sort of a universal human right. So when I graduated from law school, I don't know that I necessarily wanted to be a lawyer initially. I thought the education was what I was after, but I articled with a small family law firm, and I really enjoyed the work that I was doing. I enjoyed the fact that I was engaging with individuals directly, wasn't dealing with big corporations and things like that, and I could see the way that the work that I was doing was impacting people on a direct level. My immigration practice sort of stemmed from that, and it's the same idea, I think. Engaging with people is one of the parts of my job that I like the most.
Nice. What did you initially set out to do?
Well, I started with a business degree and a psychology degree. I think I went to school like a lot of high school graduates, not fully knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up. But I kind of had this idea that maybe this isn't it either. So I think it's always evolving, and I think what we can do with our lives changes, and we take all of these pieces of our education and our experiences, and we continue to develop and have new careers and new aspects to our careers as well.
And this was a good fit for you.
Definitely. I really enjoy what I do. I do.
So what are the new opportunities that have arose in Brooks that have allowed you to come back or made you interested in it?
Well, I think I've always had this idea of, I really enjoy the small community of Brooks. I think when I left Brooks, as a lot of high school graduates, we kind of go and we run and we go to school and we think, oh, we got to get away from Brooks and there's a life out there. But as we get a little bit older, we realize and we more appreciate, I think, what a smaller community has to offer. And I think looking back on my childhood, it was a wonderful place to grow up. In terms of the immigration law in particular, I think obviously the community of Brooks has changed. The face of Brooks has changed. I know when I was in Brooks, I think my family was probably among a handful of visible minorities, and things have really changed. And I think that there's definitely a demand for immigration services in this community, given the way that the community has shifted over the last 20 years.
Well, thank you. And I think, Mr. Mayor, I think that will fit in terms of there are a lot of employees who travel to Calgary. For the simple reason is they want to bring their wife, their children, and hustle. I know for a fact some work at GBS, some work at other places. Also, the business will suffer when they go to Calgary, other places. So having an immigration office here, a lawyer will add the economics of these people traveling, so at least they will be able to stay and be productive in the work that they do for any employer.
Absolutely, and I think it's great that people like Lisa are recognizing that the City of Brooks has, again, having been here before, you knew what it was like to live in a small community, but also what it has to offer people on a professional basis, on a career basis. Yeah. The whole experience of dealing with being a part of a diverse culture and experiencing everything from food to language to religion to, there's so many aspects of the multiculturalism in Brooks that is like, it's fresh and it's exciting, and I think it's cool that people are discovering it. And I think one of the things the city wants to provide for both people that have lived here a long time and for people that are coming is that interface in between is to allow those opportunities for people to learn about each other, to get together and share stories and share experiences. And you know what? It'd be nice to see, because if the world was a microcosm of what Brooks is, I mean, just think there would be no news on at 11 for one thing. It'd be pretty quiet. Yeah. And we would have a lot of great festivals. Sharing is a big thing, and that's one of the things the City of Brooks is trying to facilitate through welcoming and inclusive. And when someone like Lisa can come into the community and provide a service that actually has a direct benefit, it makes a huge difference for people that live here or want to live here.
Yeah, the other fact is also having an office immigration lawyer will definitely speed up the people that are suffering to bring their family to the community, the people. And also furthermore is you born here, you grew up here, and coming back, somebody who left the community, coming back to the city also will send a strong message to the youth that East and West home is the best.
Absolutely.
Come back to the city.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great place to live, raise a family. I have a daughter who's got a granddaughter now and married, and they came back to the community, and they were similar to, they never came home during the time they were at school. They never came home in the summer. They actually stayed in the community they were going to school in, but they're back. And I think again it points to the opportunities that are here, and it's really good when you see a lot of different agencies and a lot of different forces that are alive and well in the community, emphasizing that there are just great things to do in Brooks. There are great people in Brooks, and it's a great place to discover the world.
We had also Kyle earlier from Jember.
Oh yeah.
Who also left and they come back.
Yeah.
To the community that works with. We also had the RCMB and New Canadian. So it's a can be a role model for other cities around Alberta.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those kind of conversations are just all part of education. So, education and empowerment are important tools for humanity. But what are some of the ways that you can get the next generation, especially new Canadians, educated, empowered, and wanting to become part of the community? Lisa?
Well, I think we have to approach the whole issue from a few different angles. It's pretty complex, I think. I think from an external perspective, I think because I look at myself as a first-generation Canadian,
yeah.
So I'm not a new Canadian, although maybe, I've certainly grown up in a family with two new Canadians. But I think we have to be welcoming of these individuals. I think we have to be open to understanding and learning about where they came from and who they are and what their objectives and what their goals are. I think there have to be opportunities for them to be able to access education and various other social sort of goods in society, and we have to open the doors to those things as well. I think from inside those communities as well, I think there has to be a drive to encourage, I guess, learning the national languages. Of course, you can't really progress, I think, in this society without being able to speak fluently English or French, depending on where you live. I think as well, there has to be a drive to get involved and to show the rest of Canada who they are and what they're about, and to get involved. Civic participation, I think, is really important, and getting involved by the way of volunteering in other agencies, getting involved by running for office, getting involved and creating a place in Canada for themselves. Because I think that, we talk about this rich tapestry of Canadian culture, and I think there's a place for everyone, but it requires new Canadians, I think, to establish a place for themselves in that tapestry as well.
If I could add to that, one of the key things too is for people to feel safe. I think there's got to be a component that allows them to be safe in their community, that the rental housing they have, that they're going to be protected, that when they walk down the street they're not going to be assaulted either physically or verbally or any other way. And I think there has to be examples set, both by agencies and institutions, schools, city, that have to lead that conversation and be good examples for that. All of the stuff that we struggle against when it comes to human relationships, it's all learned behaviors. None of us are born with it. And it becomes learned, and it can be unlearned, and there can be good examples for it. So I think one of the key things is for people to feel safe. Institutionally, when you talk about policing and healthcare, a lot of the cultures that come here, they're either foreign or they're quite different in terms of standards and how they operate. And we just need to continue to really make a very concerted effort to make sure we understand where they come from, like Lisa said, so that we have a good foundation of how we're going to approach that education. And then secondly, making sure our institutions are prepared to be able to explain how they can have success in the system. Oftentimes we just kind of lay out the rules. And Canadians that are here are guilty of that too. They just say, here are the rules, this is how we do it, this is how you need to do it. That's not a good conversation. We don't teach kids in school that way. We take them on a path. And I think we need to be much better at doing that so they do feel safe and allow them to express themselves in our country, because we're going to be a lot richer for it if they're allowed to do that.
Yeah, two things, Mr. Mayor. I think when the police officer RCMP was here just a few minutes ago, one of the things that we highlight was for example, the culture I come from. If you see a police officer, if they stop you,
Yeah.
you have to get off the car and go to him or to that individual. It's a different here.
Yeah.
You cannot leave your car because they will shoot you. They will think that you are a threat to themselves.
Absolutely.
So he knew that. He said, yeah, that's the problem, is that we are culturally being adapting to the new Canadians, all that. It's not anything else, because the culture we come is police officers are corrupted, is all that, so they will not leave their car. They will ask you to come and ask their license and all that. Even though you give the license, still top of that you have to pay some money.
Yep.
Otherwise they will arrest you. So coming from that cultural background, it will be difficult to build that trust overnight with the police officer. That's what the other one is from our perspective, is if somebody steers you, for example, we don't steer them back, because in the culture is you don't steer back your parents. That's respect. Here, if you don't look the face or steer them back, they will think that you are lying. Yeah. So that's another angle of another problem. And this person grew up in a society where they say, no, your elder people, you don't steer them back. Yeah. You look down. Yeah. Because that is how we've been brought up. And the individual here comes here, when they're talking to the police, the guy looks down, the police officer say, oh, I nabbed this guy, he must have something, he's not telling the truth. So another problem that and the police officer, I think they doing, I think was Robert, I think he's been here just 2 months and a half.
Right.
Very new to also to our community. Yeah, but as you say, Mr. Mayor, I think we need to have to listen from the other side in order to give them the empowerment that they require. That is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we often take for granted all the things we have, and so we kind of expect people will just understand, and that's just not the case. And a little compassion and listening. I remember having a group from the Congo in City Hall, and they were French speaking, primarily French speaking. And they came into the office, and we talked about, some had been there 2 months, some had been there a year, some had been reunited with their spouse. And we were kind of, what do you like about Brooks? What don't you like about Brooks? And it was kind of interesting. So what don't you like about Brooks? And what makes it difficult for you? And the one lady just said to me, if you could just talk slower, then I could understand. And I mean, how hard would that be? That's not hard. Even for somebody like me who likes to talk a lot, it's not, I can slow down and talk more deliberately. And then once she was involved in the conversation, then she was involved, we were having a two-way conversation. She wasn't being talked at, she was talking to me because she understood what I was saying. And that's as simple as it was, talk slower. And there's probably a million examples like that across all of these situations that we just have to pay attention to, and we will get along just fine if we continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that completely. I think there's a lot of unnecessary friction that just comes to simple misunderstandings. And if you were able to talk to someone about it, have a conversation, learn what they like, whatever it may be, that I think you would find that they're not much different from yourself.
Well, and in Lisa's job, I'm sure you see it a lot because of being a lawyer and having to interpret all of those changes and rules for someone who's never had the opportunity to do it. It's got to be overwhelming.
It's very complex. I think that's part of what we do is we're taking things that we sort of take for granted and trying to explain them to someone who's never heard of some of these concepts before. So it's definitely challenging, but definitely doable. And I think what Mr. Morishita is saying is quite correct. I think it's really just being open, it's listening, and responding to what we're hearing from other groups as to what their needs are and being responsive to those.
And also educate them. I think sometimes also not knowing will not be enough defense if you go to court. Had a gentleman who is a Canadian, and he's being given a ticket by the RCMP because he was talking on the phone while he was driving. And then he gave the ticket and they left. He saw the same officer a few minutes after he saw the officer. Guess what? He insulted him. So the officer came back and handcuffed him. That's what he told me. So he phoned me. He says, "This is what I did." I said, "Good luck. That's something that I don't get involved," because he came from a society where you can do better than that. For him, he thought maybe he was given ticket. He was mad, so he thought maybe he can install the law. Now he's been handcuffed. He's been given two more tickets, I think, over 1,000 plus. And on top of that, he has a court date. So it's a kind of ignorance, and it's kind of a sad. And he's a grown-up. He's not a youth. He's a grown-up. So I spoke to him. I said with him, and I said, you know what? You need to know the system before you run with it. We don't insult officer. We don't touch officer. We don't resist. All those have to be something common sense. But now you will probably get the experience, real one, through the court. So it's a kind of a situation where they need an education, as Mr. Morishita said, and Lisa. But how can we empower them, Lisa, since you have been a lot of clients? How can you just give them the ammunition so they don't need tomorrow to be shown, especially when it comes to the family, because there is also the angle of the family misunderstanding that creates also another angle of misunderstanding.
Right. Well, so much of my job is actually what I call public legal education. And I do a lot of that in addition to my practice, because what you said is quite correct, that not knowing what the law is no defense. No. But the real question I always ask is, how are you supposed to know what the law is? Because nobody gives you a handbook and says, here are the laws of Canada, read it and learn it. It's not part of the citizenship test for the most part. So how do you really ever understand that? Accessing lawyers is, well, it's expensive and it's challenging and it's difficult. Figuring out even what question to ask is sometimes the hardest part. So from my standpoint, I do a lot of public legal education in the form of workshops and seminars and things like that, because I feel like, where else are people going to learn what these rules are? Where else are people going to learn, how to deal with police officers? Where else are people going to understand certainly issues around, domestic violence, which it's certainly a rising issue in our province. It's always been a concern, but I think with the recent economic recession, its numbers have even increased, and certainly something that I see day to day. And so often what happens, and it's not in every case, but it's a fundamental misunderstanding sometimes as to what is allowed in your intimate relationships. And that's not to excuse it. It's certainly not something that we tolerate on any level. But if an individual comes from a country, for example, where certain types of behavior are fully acceptable and they continue on in that same pattern here, it's education that they need in order to understand that that's not okay here. And I think it happens on both sides, because the victim of the domestic violence as well often doesn't necessarily realize that what's occurring in their home or in their environment is not right either. So it is education across the board. I guess the question is who has the job of doing the education, and where is that education coming from? And certainly as professionals, we take this role on as part of our profession, that we have an obligation to do over and above our practice and to give back to our communities. But it has to come from all aspects of society, I think, as well. So.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can educate enough. I don't think, and you know what? I don't think we can have enough conversations. Like, one of the things I do is kind of my standard little speech that I make is that I ask everybody I'm speaking to say, stop and have a conversation with somebody you don't know. Just say hi. You're standing in a lineup for coffee. Just say hi to somebody. You'd be amazed at the stories you hear and the little bit of enlightenment for yourself, and it makes you walk away with a little bit of a different perspective, and we can all use a lot more of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. In management training, I've learned that communication leads to understanding and that respect, and eventually to trust. So yeah, I think it definitely does start with having a conversation with someone. And I think as long as you're coming at it with the right idea in mind, I think every conversation could be something that's positive.
Yeah, giving people a hand up doesn't cost us anything. We so often, the bad side of people, the ugly side of social media, all those things, they always talk about things being taken and lost. You know what? That's the opposite of the equation. What we're talking about here is giving someone opportunities to be successful. That costs our society nothing. All it does is bring value It brings value to our communities. It brings new membership. It brings new volunteerism. By giving them that hand up, it costs us nothing to do that. And you know, it's too bad that lots of people frame their conversation in terms of what it's costing us to have this. But really, you know, what does it cost you to take 2 minutes and say, hey, you know what, I noticed we've been working together, and I noticed that, you know, your taillight is out of your car. That's a ticket. Like, they don't understand that. Like, how hard does it take? What did that cost you? That doesn't cost you anything. Or understanding what it's like to have your kids volunteer for something, like taking a minute to explain why your kid's doing this. And it's costs us nothing. I really get tired of the whole conversation that, you know, immigration costs us money and doing all this costs us money. You know what? What costs us is not taking the effort on our own to be a little bit proactive about giving some of our knowledge and our compassion to other people. We'll be way better off if we just change our attitude a little bit about that.
Wow, well said. That's I think a good message to the importance of diversity's strength for the community, and I think that's well said. I think we need to stop a few minutes and give hand to whoever that individual is, and that goes a long way. Absolutely. And I hope that. So how do they get with you, anyone that wants to get in touch with you?
Well, we have an office here in Brooks. We are Mosaic Professional Services, a group of other like-minded professionals. We decided to join forces, and the idea is it's one-stop professional services. So we're located at 440 2nd Street West, just in the lower floor. I'm not here 24/7. I do continue to have an office in Calgary, but we're here usually every couple of weeks. My intention is to have someone in office once a week in the new year.
There you go. Oh. There you go. And we hope we will find somebody that definitely you will mentor one of the youth, and that is what the intent is, and that's what we discussed some time back with our mayor. So I think somebody like you will probably be a good mentor for the youth.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm definitely open to that.
There you go.
Yeah, that was an awesome conversation, guys. Thank you very much. It was very nice meeting you.
Thank you so much. It was nice meeting you.
Again, Ms. Morishita.
So running for future, you probably learn from the mayor.
Yeah,
there you go.
I'm learning all kinds of stuff.
There you go. That's why we invite him to be a co-host.
There you go. Good for him.
The idea is not me hosting all the time.
Yeah.
It's the program is Global Village, airs from this beautiful city, and we need to continue. So if I'm not here, he will be here. He will be able to continue. So then they will see different faces, and he's the right person that will expose him to the community also.
Excellent.
But thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for
appreciate it.
Thank you
it's
very
very
much,
honored
Ahmed.
to have you.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming from Calgary too. Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
Yesterday. I came in yesterday.
This is the end of Global Village show today, and we are very thankful to the City of Brooks for giving us the opportunity to air this program from JBS Canada Center. As you can see, it's a very beautiful center, and welcome to the center. If you want to have a swimming pool, other stuff, please call the center. In the meantime, this is where the East meets the West. Ahmed Kassim, your host of the program, and this is Levi, my co-host.
Levi Fernell, thank you. And Ahmed, thank you once again for everything and for providing me this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
You did very well.
Thank you.
Have a good one, and God bless you all.